Greetings, YouTube. Shaunga here from Otherworldly Giants. Welcome back to our open classroom. This is a classroom for artists, scholars, teachers, students who create with their ancestors, with the spirit world, and with the great mystery of life and the cosmos. And yeah, I have my friend Ravyn here in this open classroom, the unofficial company dramaturg, and we're hoping to change that into an official dramaturg in this campaign that we will be running for the rest of 2025. Um, and yeah, we're gonna do a classroom today on Jupiter Cazimi because that is the day that we're recording this is June 24th. And so we have something astrologically happening called Jupiter Cazimi. And so we're going to do a classroom on that. But yeah, before we start, Ravyn, do you want to say anything to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm back again for class three of our series so far. They've
Plus
each
four.
first four. Oh my goodness, class
Yeah.
four. They've been so full of information and generosity and this beautiful technology that Shaunga has prepared and is open to sharing. And so I'm grateful to be a part of this journey as the unofficial, soon to be official dramaturge of this work, and think that in this time period of many things, it can be overwhelming to sit with self and spirit and the beyond and the quantum and all these specific realms. um, but I invite those who are listening to take those deep breaths, to maybe take some stretches, to pause and return and make notes and ask those questions in the comments that come up for you. Um, and we'll do our best to get back to your questions and get interactive with you as well. So I look forward to the community that we build together through this amazing, incredible work.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, folks who are listening, feel free to pop in questions in the chat. I would love that. I will make a point to respond to them. Yeah, and Abby, if you've been watching our open classroom, Abby had joined us for our first two classrooms, but I think is traveling somewhere in the multiverse right now, and so is not able to join us here, but is here in spirit. Um, okay, so I want to start with asking you two questions. What is the difference between an opinion and a belief, in your opinion? And the second question is, what is the difference between a teacher and a mentor? So
Okay.
start with the first one.
The first one, and the difference between an opinion and a belief, that is such a great question. I think of opinions as being shaped by a couple of different things. Opinions can be shaped by facts. Opinions can be shaped by stereotypes, narratives, dogma, good stories, religion. There's so many things that fall into our mental, physical, spiritual space that make up our viewpoints of things, the world, perspectives. Opinions are formed from what we understand of a thing. And depending on where you are getting that information from, your opinions can be wrong. So
Mm-hmm.
you're entitled to your opinion, but you're not necessarily entitled to the facts, right? And so I think that is the distinction I make between an opinion and a belief. A belief is something that I believe is internally, spiritually known. Whether or not you have experienced that yet or not. For example, Harriet Tubman, um, abolitionist of the past, who believed in a free experience of life that they had not known yet
Mm.
in their felt body, but in their system, they believed that there was that this paradigm, this space that they found themselves in enslavement, was not all that was meant to be for their life. That there was something wrong here, and that they believed in a better space for themselves and all of their people. And so belief is powerful. It is. I think it's a driving force behind a lot of the reasons people do things. Belief. I think opinions and beliefs can fall into each other, for sure. But beliefs, I feel like, are much more connected to the spirit of the earth, the spirit of deep knowing. Yeah. And the difference between a mentor and what do you,
A teacher.
a teacher. Oh my goodness, a teacher and a mentor. Mm. Okay, there's a difference between a mentor and a teacher for sure. And sometimes some teachers are mentors. So there can be blends. I'll speak about my mother a little bit because I think that's where the definition for me comes from, just so folks understand where my angle is coming from. So my mom was a teacher, and she was like, at 3, 5 years old, there were stories about her like lining up her dolls and teaching them lessons of the day. That's how deep the the teaching methodology was
I
for
feel
her.
like I did that too.
Yeah. And her friends too. She would line up her friends, and we're gonna do this today's class, and we're gonna do this
Yeah.
today. She was always in this space of wanting people to learn and also to make learning fun. She's a Sagittarius, so that charismatic, creative leadership and education was just something that she felt so passionate about, especially for um, her black dark skinned twins, you know? And so she was a teacher of mine in elementary school. So there was a difference between, being a parent to me and being a teacher to me. And I feel like teachers are, when done with intention, are great guides. They have this ability to um, take in information and distill it across the spectrums of learning that exist in front of them. And so um, a teacher is not necessarily your coach. They're not necessarily going to coach you through the processes and the strategies for attaining that goal. But what they can do is give you a sort of map, a sort of like a yeah, like a find your own adventure map that then you have to go into and find the pieces and connect them as a student, um, to then manifest grades or whatever it is you're being taught to do or perform. And a mentor is a relationship, and a teacher is someone who can teach you. That feels endless to me. Teacher and
Mm.
student.
Mhm.
It feels like you can be a forever student of history, a forever student of the quantum realm. You can be a student and you can be a teacher and a student at the same time, right? Um, and mentors are people who um, you specifically bring into your life to help you through a particular part of your experience,
Mm.
right? So I had a mentor. His name was Gary Monroe. He was a Christian pastor, um, who I worked with during a homeschool experience that I had in my last year of high school. I went to homeschool, And he would give us like lessons of the day through the Bible and some spiritual knowings and things like that. But he was a mentor to me, you know. He could see that there was so much I was struggling through and with, and I'm not just talking about sexuality, but I was struggling with the ways of just being with myself, my personality. I just felt like I wasn't living up to certain potentials. And he was really helpful at helping me to reshape that narrative and coaching me into a confidence that I still have today.
Mm.
But mentors also are relationships that are not meant to last. They have
Oh,
expiration dates
okay.
because once you have come into mentorship and mentee relationship, once the mentee gets to the place they need to get to, the relationship has to evolve.
Hmm.
You become colleagues, you separate and go on your different pathways. You find other teachers, other mentors, other experiences to diversify your toolbox.
Hmm.
Um, but often what I find, especially within queer community, is the the the, the lines between mentor and teacher get blurred, and they
Hmm.
and people believe that mentors are endless, and they're not. That's not the same thing as eldership. That's not the same thing as a teacher. Those are all different ways of connection and relationship. Um, in my experience, that's how I take in, because I can teach anyone, but a mentorship thing is very specific. You have to choose and be chosen,
Hmm.
right? Not everybody can be your mentor, even if they have the skill that you respect, right? There are lots of people who consider me a mentor through like watching certain videos that I do or speeches or my Instagram and just different things. And I can appreciate that they receive some level of um, grounding and growth from that experience. But for me, um, for me, um, it isn't yet a, a, a mentorship connection of reciprocity. Like I'm not necessarily being specific to that person and building into their space. There is a power dynamic that exists within mentor-mentee relationship, some and student-teacher dynamics too. But in mentor-mentee relationship, the mentor is someone who does not that you don't get to be a human in the experience or be a person in the experience, um, but that the relationship is almost similar to that like of a counselor in some ways. Like if you go to counseling, um they're not necessarily people who you're hanging out with for certain parts of your journey, right?
Hmm.
But of course within queer and trans communities, there are different kinds of mentors who will sit with you and will build kind of family structures through that kind of thing. um, and I respect all those different ways. But for me, I I really take mentorship very very seriously, and so I wouldn't say I'm everyone's mentor, um, and and everyone isn't my mentee. I'm very specific about the people who I've connected with because I feel like I can offer them something. Um, because I can see something in them. This is how I make decisions. If anyone is wondering, I can see something in them that is so full and exciting, and I'm excited by what they will do in the world,
Hmm.
and I want to help and support in any way I can to support them getting to that place. Often, I am both a fan of these individuals
Hmm.
and a student at the same time. So there's this relationship with people who I've mentored where I can see and feel the growth and um, can't wait for that person to be a colleague who
Mhm.
we get to like, figure out the
Mhm.
world about certain things. And so that's really how I make those decisions.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, this is such, there's so much there in what you shared. And for context, why I began asking those two questions is because if we're talking astrologically, Jupiter, the planet, is associated with those core things, right? It's associated with beliefs, opinions, um, teachers and mentors. And yeah, because I think, it's interesting because I consider a lot of people my teachers, and I will refer to people as my teachers. Many who I have a personal relationship, but I also am like, I have listened to this person's work. I have studied this person's scholarship that they have, put out publicly, whether it's, taking their classes or listening to their podcast. Um, and I consider those people teachers, because I've learned so much from them. But there isn't a personal relationship. I mean, there is, but it's not like it's very interesting to be like, I've listened to your podcast for years, right? And you're my teacher, but you might not even know my name, right? Um, and yeah, that difference between, but a mentor is perhaps someone who, you know, would require that personal kind of engagement, right? In this definition that you're bringing forward. And I just think, like, I'm like, this is an important conversation to have, especially, we're in Pride Week, right? And I think that, there's, especially on this ancestral healing journey, queer and trans folks, um, like, there's such a need for elders. And there's been such like that intergenerational exchange has been so targeted by colonization and all the ish, and very intentionally so. And so many of our, we've been talking, in the last couple days, right? Just like so many of our mentors and elders, are living with so much wounding. And there's been so much wounding, I think, on both sides, right? Of like, this kind of relationship as a pattern in our communities. And I think what is actually important here, it's like, why are we even talking about this, right? It's, I think, you brought up so many different kinds of roles that can land in this space of eldership, right? Who's an elder? Who's a mentor? Who's a teacher? Who's a coach? Who's a counselor? Who's a parent? Who's a chosen parent, right? And these things mean something different to each of us. And I also think, when you're bringing forward this, like mentors and mentees are chosen on both sides. If you look at the ancestral realm, there's an ancestral agreement, right? Because you might be like, oh, this person is the perfect mentor for me. But for whatever reason, your ancestors have not made that agreement. And so it's not going to happen, right? And this is part of, the beauty of ancestor healing. You can go into that realm and look at it. Like, what is actually the agreement between us? And I like that you brought forth that mentorship has an expiration date, because if there's an agreement, there's a journey that we're going on, and at some point that journey is going to be complete. And then we'll have to move on. And I want to really emphasize that just because your mentorship agreement has an expiration date, that doesn't mean your relationship does. And the two of us are the perfect example, right? Because we started out as you were my mentor. Like I came into a program that you were mentoring, an arts performance program, queer trans arts performance program. And at some point, that agreement dissolved, and it grew into this like circular mentorship kind of relationship, and also colleagues, friends, like lifelong friends. You know what I mean? Like I consider you a lifelong friend at this point. And I think we have an ease with each other that not everybody has, right? It's like um we don't really have a lot of processing conversations about our relationship. We just kind of let it go where it needs to go. And I feel a great amount of ease with you in terms of allowing those changes to move through our friendship over the years. But I think this is important to note, right? Because if we have all these different kinds of opinions, understandings, belief systems, you know, that are informing our idea of who you're supposed to be to me in this intergenerational exchange, that can be a place where a lot of conflict, heartache, you know, angst comes in. Maybe, even unnecessary conflict that maybe, I'm just thinking about the times when a particular mentorship agreement is complete and either one person or both people aren't accepting that something has to evolve here, something has died, something has been reborn. Um, And when we kind of like, you have to be this thing for me, and I won't let this change. Um, it's worthy to look at like what is our actual deeper definitions that we're carrying in our opinions, in our belief systems that inform our expectations of one another. I would say Jupiter also lives in that realm of like, what do you expect? What do you judge? How do you judge people based on what do you expect from them, right? So I'm gonna, it's interesting. I kind of wrote down my own answers in terms of what's this difference between an opinion and a belief. And what I wrote down before we hopped on was an opinion can be changed in a conversation. A belief is held by a world. So it's built, developed, grown in a community. It's held by a culture, systems, paradigms, a worldview. And thus, a belief can only change when your world changes. Okay? So, storytelling technology. When does a world change? At the end. So, a signifier that your story is done is because you have noticed the world has changed. So, as a writer, you'd be like, when the heck am I done writing the story? When the world has changed. And the point of writing a story, you would argue, is to change a world, right? It's to change a character, how they see the world, what they believe about the world, and thus the world itself. And you could argue there's some exceptions, right? Um, some stories, the purpose may be to show you that the world doesn't change at the end. And you might call those dystopias or tragedies. However, even in those stories, there's a play on the reader and the character's expectations that by going on this journey, the world will change. And when they realize that it doesn't, that changes them. But because that changes them, the world does change. So we're getting into this like paradoxical kind of thing. But even in those stories, you reorient yourself to the world, which does create massive change. It's like moving, from one city to another, from one side of the continent to another. When you look at the world from a different place, everything changes. So if a belief can only change when a world ends, that means in order to change what we believe, something has to die, right? And this is why I don't try and change people's minds when I believe something about liberation and they don't. And that's something that we deal with in, liberation movement communities, right? Like, oh, my job as an activist is to change your mind. Maybe for some. But, as an ancestral healer, I would be signing up to be someone's death doula, their storytelling doula, right? I would be signing up to be their guide, their mentor, and take them through an entire healing journey if I'm like, I want to change your mind about this. That's why I would write a book, to change someone's mind. And that's why I would say, hey, character, you want to do this with me? You want to change your world? You want to change what you believe? Let's do this. But that character has to consent. That relation has to be mutually chosen. Um, and there's, a deeper conversation that we can get into about like, how do we know if a character does or doesn't consent? Because I think that's where you get into conversations about appropriation, right? About like putting words in characters' mouths that they wouldn't actually say. And how do you know if you're doing that or not? Um, but kind of bringing it to a larger view, right? Like, um, yeah, that's why I don't try and change people's minds, right? When they have a belief. If we're having a conversation and I have an opinion, we could have a dialogue about it. Maybe you'll change your opinion of me if I say, "Oh, you have an opinion about me? Well, this is a story about my life." Oh, now your opinion of me has changed. But if you have a belief about me that is rooted in a belief system, like say racism, in order to change your belief about me, I would have to be your death doula and your storytelling doula. And you would have to consent to that because, like if you're not consenting and I'm like, I'm going to change you, we get into dangerous territory, things like colonizing missionary work, right? Conversion therapy, if we're talking about Pride Week. I'm going to impose and force my belief system onto you until you change into who I want you to be, whether or not you're consenting to go on that journey with me or not. So I have to say to YouTube, our viewers, I really wish that I could like have both of our faces on here at the same time. I just haven't been able to figure that out. I do have my limitations because like Raven's face is like, okay, there's what do you have to say?
What do I have to say? First of all, thank you for offering your definitions. Um, I love defining, redefining. I'm a Virgo. I love how um the languaging of definitions can change. And I like the way that you have set up um understandings and a way for people to fall into the in to utilize those tools, those understandings to apply to their life. Um there's something that I was thinking about before, and it's a habit of mine, is that I don't like presenting I don't like presenting things without also giving options. So there's something that I'm thinking about around how do you know those differences? You've touched on it, but like how do you know the difference between the mentor, the teacher, the death doula, these titles, these relationships? How do you know? How do you decide who your mentor is? Is it just something that you feel? Is something that is learned through practice of trying things out? Um, that's just something I'm thinking about. And for listeners, it's something that will constantly be reshaped as your world changes. you know, these definitions have changed for me over the span of my 40 years, right? Um, and something also I am just going to leave these to be considered as we continue this conversation. And one is, how do you transition relationships?
Hmm.
That's important to build into a practice of how to allow things to evolve,
Hmm.
dissolve, and change. I hated the word change. Remember this. I hated it. I was like, oh, change. Oh, until I realized that I have changed
Hmm.
many, many, many times.
Hmm.
And I wasn't recognizing that. that I was doing a thing um, that was maybe unconscious to me. Um, so I often have this conversation with another friend of mine about we're not really great at breaking up well.
Hmm.
We don't have divorce parties the way we have wedding parties,
Mm.
and I don't mean that as a celebration of a failure. I mean a celebration of an experience,
Yes.
of a love, of a family built, of an opportunity to extend that family into a whole new idea of itself,
Mm.
right? Um, and over time, I've understood that you know marriage, for example, it doesn't freeze you in time. It doesn't keep you in that place of perfection, of design, of dream. It doesn't do that. It actually pushes you to the other extent of who you're going to be, of who you want to be. And so there is growth in relationship. No matter how long or short that marriage is, there is something that you receive
Hmm.
from that. So there's these ideas that, oh, a 4 month marriage is a failure. No, they had the full journey in
Yeah.
the 4 months, the journey that they needed to have. And now it's something else, right? It's like respecting the time of things. So anyway, there's just those pieces that I was thinking about in relationship to what you were sharing.
Hmm. And I think, that's just something that I appreciate most about being welcomed into communities that center around ancestor veneration and our relationship with the spirit world, because I think that's probably a central tenet is repairing our relationship with this like end of life phase, right? This transition phase. It is asking that question, like, how do we die well, right? How do we break up well? How do we move through big transitions well? Like that's what our ancestors teach us. That's what it teaches. I think maybe the most, prominent thing that developing a relationship with the spirit world will teach you is like how to nurture this transitional space. Um, and by doing that, like I think it solves so many problems that we have in relationships and queer community and all these kinds of things, right? So let's go to, so we're talking about Jupiter, but today astrologically we have something in the sky called Jupiter Cazimi, June 24th, 2025. Um, and it's going to be exact at 11:17. So it's 10:42 right now, Eastern time. So we're not quite there yet, but we're getting there. Um, so Kazimi is an Arabic word and it means the heart of the sun. And so a planet in the sky is Kazimi when it is what we call conjunct the sun. And so that means, for example, Jupiter is at 3 degrees of Cancer right now. And so is the sun. So they're both in the same place in the sky. And what really happens is that that planet and everything it represents melts. It melts in the heat of fire. It melts in the heart of the sun. And if I were to bring this into storytelling technology, I think this moment represents the turnaround point in a story, right? Where you get to the heart of the matter, the heart of hell, like the heart of fire. And what happens energetically is the sun cleanses with fire, right? So cleansing is different in each element. Wind cleanses in a certain way, water cleanses in a certain way, fire cleanses in a certain way, and not just any kind of fire, but fire in the sky. So we're talking about stars, right? Because we're talking about the sun. And so fire in the sky is different than fire on land. Um, and right, so this part of the story is, what needs to die and be reborn in order for this story to succeed or survive or live or become who it is trying to become. And the planet um, gives us an idea in terms of our collective reality. What is dying? Okay, so the sign indicates where it's dying and who is involved in that dying. Um, so for example, if we were to have a Saturn Cazimi, Saturn is about commitment, long-term commitment. So a Saturn Cazimi would cleanse and remove with fire whatever long-standing commitments you have that will not no longer stand the test of time. And it will only leave you with things that deserve your focus and attention. Venus Cazimi will cleanse a relationship pattern. Mercury Cazimi will cleanse a thought pattern. And so, what about Jupiter? Removes and cleanses belief, a belief system that is ready to die, that is complete. And we're talking about like ending agreements, ending ancestral agreements. There's an ancestral agreement that is ending today um, in the cultural cosmic zeitgeist. So that's just a planetary thing that's ending. And for each person, depending on where you're located in relationship to this part of the cosmos, you will experience it in your personal life to varying degrees. Um, and so more about Jupiter, right? In terms of, okay, so what is it actually that is being purified by fire today? Um, Jupiter is the teacher of teachers. So represents someone who comes into our life as a life teacher, even if it's for 4 months, they teach you something really significant about life. Um, and I do think, you brought up, marriage, right? Like our partners are teachers in that way. And they can come in all sorts of different relationships, parents, community members, peers, but they're here to teach us something big about the world. Jupiter represents the seer, the prophet. It also represents fields of research, fields of knowledge, and belief systems that organize around those fields, your overall worldview. And it does, every planet has a shadow side, right? So Jupiter also represents the wounded mentor. And I would categorize things like the colonizing missionary work and conversion therapy under the umbrella of this wounded Jupiter, wounded priest, right? Wounded religious figure. It represents both truth and propaganda. And then the sun is who are you? Who are you? Just without any judgment. When are you feeling most like yourself? When are you being most yourself? When are you at your brightest, your best? And so today is really about cleansing away beliefs that prevent us from being our best, and shining and radiating in the world. And if you're going to look at this at a collective level, it's about cleansing, purifying, removing a belief, maybe about liberation. What is a belief that sits in the center of our liberation movements that is like a sore thumb, an aching wound? That is actually being released today. And we're coming to a deeper truth of what's the belief that's actually in the center there. And if we look at where this is happening, the third degree of Cancer. So it's something about home, a belief that we have about home, family, ancestors, roots, our past. These are all things that Cancer is about. Our caregivers, elders, children, dependents. Also, what is ours to steward and what belongs to us and who we belong to. And that can extend to our belief about a nation. A nation is what, so many of us are so committed, right, to nationalist propaganda because it gives us a sense of home and belonging. And yeah, mic drop. Um, let's talk numerology because not only is today a very important day cosmically, if you look at the numerology of today, it's deep. June 24th, 2 plus 4 is 6. June is 6, the 6th month, and we're in a 9 year, 2025. If you add up 2025, it's 9. But if you look at, they're all threes, right? Six is 3 plus 3. So we have two sixes and a nine, which means we have 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3 on the third degree of Cancer. That's eight threes. Okay, when we have big numerology on any day, like that means whatever is happening cosmically is super charged. Um, and my assessment of numerology, and I have a chart on numerology that you can download if you go to my website. So I will click the link below. But very, briefly, three is related to the third house, which is about siblings, um, early childhood education, the teachers, the very early teachers of our life. I would put your mom in the three category because she's a teacher in school, right? Um, but it's also, very much about siblings, our peers, people who feel like siblings, comrades. And if we have eight threes, eight represents commitment. I mentioned Saturn. It's like, what are our lifelong commitments? What is going to stand this test of time? It represents strength. Um, and if we bring storytelling into that, one of my practices is called the Storyteller's AstroCartography. So that combines astrology, numerology, and storytelling. And so astrocartography is the study of how planetary ley lines run through different parts of the planet. And when you're on a particular land or city, um, you will experience that city according to what planet is running through that line. And when you add in the storyteller, we say there are particular stories, mythologies, and fairy tales that live on ley lines on the land. And when you're on that land, you experience that story. That story plays out in your life. And as artists, we're usually called to make art related to that story and our expression of that story and what we're trying to heal through ourselves by telling that story, how we're trying to change the world by telling that story. Okay, so for example, if we're looking at this supercharged three, um, a story related to that would be, I would say, Cinderella, Cruel Stepsisters, or The Lion King, Wounded Brotherhood. Um, so we can say that's the type of story coming up right now today. Um, in terms of what is being supercharged by this numerology and also the astrology of it. And if I am talking about eight, what's a story about strength? Hercules. We just watched that for my birthday. Hercules. So I want to ask you, let's try and let's pull out a little thread. If we put these puzzle pieces together, we're talking about, we're really talking about chosen family here, right? This combination of Cancer and the three of sibling. We're like people who are siblings, feel like siblings and become chosen family. And we try and create a home with them. Um, and then looking at these stories, which you know very well, Cinderella, Lion King, um, Hercules that we just watched. If we were to pull out like a teaching, okay, so we're looking at the wounded mentor, the relationship to mentors, um, these archetypal stories. What do you feel is coming up for you in terms of if we could look at these stories, what are they trying to say in this moment?
Whoa. Okay, big questions, big questions. What are these stories trying to say? Hmm. I think of the stories that you mentioned, The Lion King specifically, and the ways in which I always wondered as a kid about something that wasn't in the story. That, now there's a new movie that now is part of the story. But as a kid watching Lion King, I thought, where are the parents in this? Not Simba's parents, Mufasa and Scar's parents.
Oh.
Because I often believe that a lot of the strife between siblings um, can be boiled down to not actual problems with the siblings themselves, but actually like experiences from parents that have shaped who that person is to you. For
Mm,
example, if you have parents who highlight a child in order to shame another child's personality, talents, etc., 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 that creates a dynamic between the children
right.
um, that can become volatile over time. And if not attended to, because people can be celebrated and learn to support being celebrated, not having have not having to have the same kinds of prowess in those areas, but have a different kind of realm of prowess in different areas. Um, then you find balance, right? My mother, for example, was able to find balance between my twin brother and I about the things that he was fantastic at that I had no interest in, right? And people think twins have to do everything together. No, 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 no. My mom was like, that's your thing, and that's your thing. You have your thing, and you have your thing, and it's your duty to support each other's thing. That was like a lesson as we were growing up. So even now, as we have evolved in our careers, I can support his thing, even though it was different than my thing, and
Hmm.
not the jealousy that comes through that. And
Hmm.
so, and it's deeper than jealousy, right? It's jealousy is just like the top layer of the kiddie pool. Underneath that is some deep parental hurt, right? We're talking about, you know, the teachers, and
Yeah.
there's a wound there. Um, so I feel like but what these stories also offer us are, if you think about Simba's character, he grew up being brought into a new family, queerness, right?
Right.
He was brought into two cis male parents,
Right.
right?
Right.
There is something there about who can raise a child and who raised that child.
Right. And the last time we watched The Lion King, it hit you in particular. You're like Timon and Pumbaa, like the queer chosen family that like took him in after he had to leave, like after big trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he was able to return to himself, to his um, purpose, and to his family with his chosen family. They weren't left behind. They were with him in this new experience of the world,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Um, and so in that story alone just offers you so many different avenues for how you can explore a journey, for how you can live a life, how you can understand how death is not the end of the experience of the relationship. It can be the beginning of a whole new adventure, journey. Um, And thinking about this in terms of eldership of um, political movements and um, how necessary that has been for for folks to have OGs and elders who nurse you through some of your learnings.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so in this time period where we're watching movements come up and down, the waves of movements, and we're watching the attention come up and down as it naturally does, um, we are on a down wave here. We're seeing exhaustion, we're seeing frustration, we're seeing infighting, we're seeing all these things and all across movements. I'm not referring to one specific movement here. And so then who are we asking to come in and help us figure that out? Elders, OGs, people who have
Right,
been through the thing. You know, they may not have the answers, but what they might give us are pathways
right.
for us to discover what is the necessary next right thing for us to step into um, on our journeys. And they're all
Mm-hmm.
so different, but that's kind of what it feels like for me. It brings up.
Mm-hmm. I also am like, I'm getting what's coming up for me is our returned ancestors and wise ones in our young people and elders in our young people. Because okay, what if I'm like, okay, there's the distilling some of the medicine, the lesson, the principle that you brought forward in terms of what might this moment be teaching us is ask that question, what isn't here in a story? What do I not know? Right? What do I not know about Scar and Mufasa? What do I not know, right? About Cinderella and there's a whole Wicked is this incredibly massively popular franchise now that started with just asking that same question, like what do we not know about the Wicked Witch of the West here, um and taking it back to Harriet Tubman, which is really interesting because Cynthia Erivo played both Harriet Tubman and the Wicked Witch of the West. And both those characters need to believe in something that isn't there in the world, in reality. And they had to remember something, whether it's in themselves or, in their spirit, and choose that. Choose the unseen, choose the unknowable, believe in that more than anything else. Um, and that's why I'm kind of bringing forth, the elders that live in our young people. Um, And it's not to say to treat young people like adults or like put adult responsibilities on them. It is to nurture the wisdom that they already have within them, right? And listen to our young people um, with reverence and respect. Because if we're searching for elders, we might find them in external relationships. But I think, even the personal conversation that we had yesterday, it's so important to find that elder within ourselves and find who are, and that is the ancestor healing journey. It's like you actually have access to your greatest eldership within yourself. You can listen to your body. They live there. You can listen to your emotions. They live there. You can listen to your tears. You can find them in how you feel when you sit next to a tree. Um, So I'm going to take this to what I want to say about today. And kind of building on our last open classroom, where I'm talking about building the Spider-Woman network, right? And so if you're just hearing about this, this is a guild, a gathering place, and a universe, which you kept saying that last time, the Spider-Woman universe, for artists to come together, who create in this way with spirit, ancestors, the otherworldly, with ceremony, with ancestor veneration. And there's a big vision, big dream that I'm stewarding in terms of growing ourselves collectively into an economy that can be self-sustaining. Um, and I've been saying, I'm almost time to publicly launch it. And, I've been sharing it in little places, but tomorrow's the new moon. And so tomorrow will be the official days that we open the door to everyone. And this is exactly perfect timing, right? Because we needed to go through this gate, Jupiter Cazimi, to cleanse a belief. Because when you're building anything, right, you need to know what that belief is in the center of your story, in the center of your movement, even if you can't see it, even if you're retrieving it from deep, deep, deep within you. You need to know what it is you believe in and what you're willing to risk everything for, because you will be tested and you will be challenged. And I will say Jupiter is about faith. So it's what we have our faith in when we can't see it, what anchors us, what keeps us going when we're being challenged. And so a central part of what I want to create in terms of a self-sustaining economy is this collective research project around reclaiming the ancestral roots of public funding and bringing back the power and responsibility of public funding back to the village and saying, these colonial systems, the academic industrial complex, corporate, nonprofit, they don't, government bodies, they don't own public funding. We do. And own in terms of steward, right? Um, belong in terms of that heart belonging, not belong as in, I'm t gonna take power over you. Um, and so I'll tell you that one of my principles in my own ancestral healing journey is that I don't cut my own corners. So it's not my job to tend to everything in the universe that needs tending to. That's dehumanizing. But I have things to tend to, and I don't cut my own corners. Meaning, if I'm in a phase of development, a creative process, a healing journey, and I say, you know what, this is a period of research. I'm building and bringing things together. I don't have any clear answers. I'm in the process of finding that out, and I don't need to rush this part of the process. But I also don't have, a client coaching package or a program to sell. My job is to steward this research. So if I don't have anything to sell, um, what do I do? Okay, I go for fun. I have to try and figure out how to fund that. So again, okay, let's turn to colonial corporate academic funding bodies. Maybe that's not an option for me. Maybe for whatever reason, right? I already applied and I never got it. Maybe I need something immediately and I can't wait for that deadline. Um, maybe it would severely compromise my project or my health to play by their rules. Maybe I don't want to collaborate with folks who are supporting genocide. Maybe their application process is inaccessible. And maybe I just don't want to. Right. But then I turn to my village and I say, and my village is like, well, okay, well, let me know when you have something that I can buy, because that's the only way that I will pay you for anything. And that's what we believe, that a village will only pay us when we have things to buy and sell, versus a culture that feels very well purposed to fund each other in our process, the entirety of it. That's the dream, because we've built and developed complex strategies to figure out how to bring money into our lives and fund ourselves in this current culture. Side gigs, 9 to 5s, sponsorships, partnerships. We find ways. to get through the periods of time when we are actually supposed to just receive public funding from our village. And some people have figured out how to do this through, with a great amount of ease, and some people do it in a way that is still, people are really struggling. But everything that we've figured out revolves around the same belief that there are parts of our livelihood and creative process that are inherently unfundable. That's what these systems have taught us. So the first thing people will ask me when I say, I want a village artist granting system, they'll say, well, Shaunga, okay, how is that going to work? And I'm saying, I cannot speak on that question unless we are in agreement around this core belief, or rather, I can't have a conversation with you about this unless we are in agreement about the belief that is in the core of this ceremony. And my belief is that every part of our process is inherently fundable. And maybe I don't have any evidence of that, except everywhere there's evidence of that in nature. A flower grows, a tree grows, and every part of nature comes together to support that life. And, the sun doesn't say, I'm going to wait for you to fully bloom before I invest in you. That's not how nature works. So when people say, well, people would never do that, Shaunga. People don't work like that. People don't fund things like that. Let's be clear about what we're actually saying. White supremacy doesn't do that. Anti-blackness doesn't do that. Ableism doesn't do that. Religious violence, propaganda, caste system, rape culture, patriarchy. They don't fund the entire process. But humans, we're part of nature, no? It's who we are. And we're indoctrined in those belief systems, and they are old, but nature's older than that. And the elders that we have within us are older than that. And if we're not acting according to nature, it's because we're not acting like ourselves as a species. Um, and so that's what is in the heart of it's 11:11. That's what's in the heart of this Spider-Woman universe for me. It's my faith in a belief system that is everywhere, that has been held and protected by generations of ancestors and wisdom keepers after phenomenal challenges and antagonism and genocide. And that's just the belief, you know, that belief has been put in there. And I think that's what faith is, right? You put your belief in the heart of the sun and you let everything melt, you let the sun melt everything away. And after that, what you believe is still there. That's faith. And that is what I have to say today in this open classroom, right? Is that that's where I'm at. Um, every part of our process is inherently fundable. We see that everywhere in nature. And if we want to have a conversation about how is this going to work, if you're doing this with me, we're putting that belief in the center of it, right? And so for listeners, where are you in relationship to that belief? Um, because let's get on the same page, and then we can talk strategy. Then we can talk organizing because we're saying this is the seed that we're going to grow in ourselves, and then in small groups, and then into circles, then cultures, then systems. This is the seed. Every part is inherently fundable. And for me, and I think for anyone who is stewarding something, you have to put that belief in the center of your day. It's got to be there when you wake up. It's got to be there when you go to bed. It's got to be there when you dream, when you talk on the phone, when you go on a date, when you shoot the shit about nothing that matters when you talk about really serious things. What does it mean to have that belief and that commitment at the center of your day? Because that's what I have to do in order to steward this. And I think for those of us who are game changers, revolutionaries, we have to have that kind of strength and support each other, right? In the like, this is in the center of my day, okay? And it's going to be challenged and tested by all the things that don't want it to survive. So, in the next video that I do, I actually want to take you through some of my strategies about how exactly this would work. Um, and some of, examples of organizing this public funding movement. But today, um, we needed to have this conversation first. And so I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna pause there for, I have like a ending question for you, but I'll pause for any like thoughts first.
I mean, I have so many like snaps and oohs and
Yeah.
ahs and validations and reframes. I love a reframe. Virgos, we love a reframe. Okay, you did not leave me. I released you. You released me from whatever this thing is. I was not left behind. I was released. You know, we have this way of shifting that with a little bit of delusion. You know. Anyway, but this is it's so solid. Your the belief that all parts of the process um, can be and should be funded, and the faulty system. Capitalism is a faulty system built in and designed to fracture
Hmm.
paradigms, communities,
Hmm.
relationships. It is built to destroy, and we and many of us who are born in these generations are raised by um, the god capitalism. I don't know if we call it a god. I don't know what we call it, but it is a something. The entity that is capitalism is a very full force experience that we have to grapple with the parts of that we doll out to each other and to ourselves. And so um, writing that page or putting out that blog post or those things um, with these with these I think okay, what am I saying? We want to be validated for the things that we do, but some of those ways that we have been taught to be validated by certain things are part of a system that eats away at you. So, for example, I'm going to become an actor because I won an Oscar. No, baby, you want to be heard.
Right.
You want to be seen. You want to be
Hmm.
valued.
Hmm.
You want your work to be valued. What an Oscar is supposed to offer an actor is the ability to price up,
Ah,
to level up,
ah.
to be number one on the call sheet, to be prioritized, right? To not have to go through the same minutia as someone who does not have one.
Mm.
That is why they're coveted, not just because they're this excellence award. No, because they offer you a ticket into a particular club of actor, a particular club of Golden Globe winner, Emmy winner, Tony winner. There are these really specific titles that allow you. Oh, you're a Tony winner. Okay, great. We'll listen to you. Let's make you a movie,
Hmm.
right? And so it's a way to level up in an industry,
Hmm.
right? And that's why you have snubs. That's why the Queen of
Mhm.
Wakanda did not win an Oscar,
Mhm.
right? These things are intentional. And you know, and so and like you can fall at any level. There are whole industries where there is no award, no reward. And remember that awards are made up, right? There's no award for janitorial services. Why is that?
Right.
There's no award for the laundresses who did Wicked,
Right. Mhm.
right? The people who have to wash the wigs. All of that
Mhm.
is not seen as the crew who we are identifying as a crew,
Mhm.
right? But these people are caring for, holding, making sure that these things are in place so the actors are taken care of, right? So the story is taken care of, all of that. And so when we think about our work and our building of our new projects, you're building of this project, and in this, and what it offers us is a is a uh, pathway and offering into what we say we want as people. Oh, we want a different way. Oh, this way does not work. Oh, we want socialism for the working class, right? But how? But
Mhm.
how? And it's like, here's one way
Mhm.
that will evolve into many ways. This is why I say universe. I
Yeah.
say universe because there's not just one planet in the universe that does just one thing. There are
Mhm.
all these planets and stars and asteroids, and I don't even know what else is out there to make
Yeah.
things go boom, 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 you know. And so you can land in any space in this universe and create dynamic change that offers us this felt experience of joy, felt experience of peace, as something that is not just a white man's word
Mhm.
and or experience,
Yep.
and that we don't have to wait to die in this life in order to get our peace.
Yeah.
That's also what we've been taught, the religious da 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 da. That you work and you grind, and then you'll be rewarded when you die in heaven,
Yep.
right? And so, what you are asking us to do is to bring it here, to live in the in the experience that we dream up, that we work for, that we're not waiting for retirement to enjoy.
Mm.
So that's what I received, and so much more. But you know, it's only so long.
Yeah. It's so interesting you brought up the Oscars. And when I didn't look at the clock when it's 11:22 now, and I didn't look at the clock at exactly 11:17, but it was sometime when you were talking about the Oscars, which is the Jupiter Cazimi. That's so there's you were speaking about the Oscars when that moment came. So that's something to note. And I want to, bring forward like something another, friend of ours mentioned a while back that I didn't know before this, but the history of the Oscars, they were created to suppress a labor strike, right? They to is placate, is that the right, I don't know if that's the right word. It's like to oh, like kind of give
To
artists
quell dissent, to like,
quell dissent, yeah.
yeah,
To get artists to accept shitty working conditions. Because oh, here's a little award, right? Um, so that's the history behind why that was created. And yeah, I think about like Jupiter is about our right to grow, to expand. And we're talking about this level up. We have a birthright to complete contracts, to complete ancestral agreements, and move on to a different phase in our life. Like we have a birthright to move on to the next thing. And it doesn't have to be this arduous, process full of just like turmoil. to just end an agreement in a relationship and move on. And we think about, marriage, and especially, I think in queer culture, but especially in straight culture, right? To divorce someone is just, and you think about like, all these stories around like how violent it actually can get, legal battles and all this kind of stuff. It's actually our birthright to just end things and move on to the next thing. And even in this Oscar system, right? Um, we're it's so I'm using the word gatekeep. It's gate kept, even though that word is in my spiritual community, it's a sacred word, right? The gatekeeper is someone who is a guardian of the gates between worlds. But this word has been co-opted, right? Um, but yeah, like we that system gatekeeps so many people from just access to another thing. The ability to say, you know what, I want to create, I want to explore this body of knowledge, I want to explore my craft. And so we're talking about, this whole series about this world that we're creating is for the planetary artist in residence. We don't work for the industry, we work for the planet. And we're talking about how the industry has infiltrated our movements, our intimacy, and everything. And that's a big part of it, right? The Oscars. We take away our village right to celebration. What are our village practices around celebrating an end of life journey? You mentioned before, right? Like I broke up with this person. I got divorced um from this person. Um Queer people, I got divorced from my family. Can we celebrate your life experience? Can we celebrate your life? Can we bring together a place of pride for the entirety and the fullness of our life stories, especially when things end, right? It's our birthright. So that's what's coming up for me. And I have two questions that I want to ask you to ponder. You can share what you have today, but I also want to, you can take this as like a research or creative question. And for folks who are listening, you can take this too. So, what are you creating right now? Whether it's a project or something in your life. And what is the belief in the center of your story? So as a storyteller, right, you have maybe characters that have particular beliefs, but as a storyteller, you have to believe something in order to write your story, in order to live out this next phase of your life. Just the way I'm saying, like, I have to believe this in the center of my universe in order to build this thing. Um, and this is something that is going to have to anchor you. It's a faith that is going to have to carry you through all the things that are going to test you and trying to stop your story from surviving. So, Raven, what is the belief in your memoir? And two, what do you need in the set? What belief do you need in, our shared liberation movements right now? If you were to say, I need this belief, or I have this belief, and this is where I'm going from. So it's your memoir, so your story that you're writing, and also this movement that we're in.
Wow. Okay. So, um, this memoir has taken many shapes. Um, but what I fundamentally am building out is a record of my growth.
Hmm.
It's an honoring of who I am. It essentially a love letter to
Mm.
myself that I am sharing with the world who reads it. Um, in that this beautiful offering that I have, which is that I love myself in every stage of that growth, even when I hated myself.
Mm.
Um, that there's still something that I fundamentally believed about myself, that I am lovable, that I will find um, a place of belonging. And through these trials, through these efforts, through these leaps of faith,
Mm-hmm.
I landed on something that was solid, but I didn't know that it wasn't on the ground. You know, people think of solidness as just earth, but solidness is also in the air. It's also in the wings, also in the water, and the fire, and the elements, and these elders who are holding me and teaching me and how they did that. So this memoir offers um, a deep reflection on my humanity. And that's also what it offers. It's a humanizing act um, for trans people through my stories. Um, and the belief at the center of it, yeah, is that I am inherently lovable.
Mm.
That I am here to remind us of love.
Mm-hmm.
Remind love of, like, it's like, how did I say it the other time? It's like I'm here to remind love about itself, you know? And love is in is in the cheesiest, most dynamic, explosive, volcanic experience that it can be. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's big and small and mundane and large and blown out of proportion. Um, yeah, yeah, and it's sitting at the center of it. Is this love of people, which I have denied many times, but I love people, and I love um I have a love for humanity that I don't understand. I'm
Mm.
getting to the second answer here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't understand why I love humanity the way that I do.
Oh, that's deep.
And because I have experiences of being hunted through
Mm-hmm.
generations of my DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have no reason to trust humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, we are organic tissue connected to every part of this planet. We are the planet. And I love this planet. I
Mm-hmm.
love the earth. I love the ocean, you know? Um, I love these things. So I have to love us. We are inherently a part of these things. And so our movement, right? It's like anytime that I speak, anytime that I'm thinking about what I'm going to offer into community is reminder. It's an opportunity to sit stillness in the chaos, quiet in the chaos, to get still for a moment and be willing to be teachable
Mm.
from this planet, the
Mm.
greatest elder that we have, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and allow these systems that we can see. The mycelial system, my goodness,
Yes.
that is it right
Yeah.
there. If we, in our movements, in our justice movements, in our liberation redefinitions, could move and love like mycelium, unstoppable.
Mm.
That moves across oceans that are dead zones,
Mm-hmm.
right? My mycelium connects across this entire planet. And so for me, it's like we see it. We're connected. And unfortunately, like this is harsh and harmful, but COVID-19, if anything didn't convince you that we were connected,
Mm-hmm.
that we impact each other,
Mm-hmm.
that is an identifier that we impact each other, whether you are in China, whether you are in Tibet, whether you are in any place on this planet. We share this air, we share this planet. I say this all the time. We share the planet with the people who are actively trying to destroy it. So, what does
Yep.
it mean to transform ourselves? And those people are still here.
Yep.
And how do we engage that? Um, no matter what the fighting strategy is for that thing. I'm not saying that it has to be peaceful in a way to like stop movements from going to their full threshold.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think humanity has to be at the center.
Yes.
Abolition, it has to be the center. Abolition isn't just about destroying. Abolition is ultimately about collective commitment to safety,
Mm.
and the fact that we have shucked that responsibility to one department
Right.
to be responsible for everybody's safety, and they do not have the skills, they don't have the range. And we have long evidence of this, long-standing evidence, and yet despite that evidence, we want to believe that that is where our safety lies.
And then we have to look at what is the belief in the center of that system, because that is what they're enacting.
Is that we will be saved by the
Mm-hmm.
hero, the
Right.
dark knight, the policeman,
Right.
who were not here to save us.
Mm-hmm.
That was not their function, that was not their purpose, right? So I think as movements who are rising up in this moment, I think it's movements that have sustained through like thousands of years. Um, this is a time of rainbow coalition. This is a time of, and I don't mean coming together like kumbaya. I mean coming together to strategize how we take care of each other, how we prioritize um, uh, practices of community, real practices of accountability that is not punish based, that is not carceral based. Like all of these, all those paradigms have to fall so
Mm-hmm.
that we can really address harm before it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that we've been taught is about a reaction to a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Debt is a reaction to overspending.
Mm.
In an experience where we're being charged for water, an endless resource we're being charged for, and that is something that has been made normal.
Mm-hmm.
So the truth is, we as humans, Sonia Renee Taylor says this all the time, you can become used to anything,
Right.
right? And so in that, we have to become used to caring outwardly and inwardly
Mm-hmm.
with our boundaries. We said it earlier, like I can't cut corners.
Yeah.
I can't save everything because that is there's an inhumanity into that. And also it's someone else's journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say that I'm gonna say this and it's gonna make people blah, 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 but it's like a Beyonce, a Ravyn Wings, a Shaunga Tagore, this person or this person or this person or that person. If we collaborated, we talked about this yesterday. I'll wait for that one. But if we
Yeah. Right.
collaborated, then what could happen?
And from a sincere center. Like we
Sincere.
actually we're like, I sincerely believe in this, and you don't have to convince me.
No,
Let's collaborate from there.
let's collaborate. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I say, like, collaborate. I mean that we're not always going to understand each other.
Hmm.
We have different worldviews. We have to like be real about the fact that me being born in Bermuda has a different lived experience than any other Caribbean island.
Mm.
I know this.
Hmm.
There is a privileged experience here in the Caribbean diaspora, right? That is just true because of the way that Bermuda is held in the UK, the US, and Canada alike. We are held in a different category,
Interesting.
right? And that isn't fair. None of that is fair, but that is the truth. And so the way that I grew up, this is why I always say I was born in Bermuda. I went to high school in Atlanta, Georgia, and these things have shaped the way that I move and experience and view the world. To take responsibility for my bias
Hmm.
because I do have a shape, right? And so as people who are coming into movements, as people who are coming into this conversation, as people who are still listening in this conversation or returning to this conversation after pausing for a moment, it's an opportunity to reflect, to introspect, and while you're doing that, be supported in the process.
Hmm.
Right? It can relate to grief. It can relate to all these things. That's not something that you have to do alone. Hurt doesn't happen by itself. So that's what I would say.
And I want to, yeah, bring it back to I love this beautiful belief in the center of your story. Like I am inherently lovable, and every part of my process, every part of my humanity is inherently lovable. And kind of what is coming up for me now in terms of technology is that when we can discern the belief that we carry that is very, very personal. That's also our gift, right? That when we share anything we create from that, that is the gift, right? So, in terms of the technology and the medicine of your book, that's the gift, right? What happens when you create something that is so driven by this belief that I am inherently lovable in my humanity. The gift that you give is that now the people who engage with your story are given the gift to remember and be reminded that I am inherently lovable too. My humanity is inherently lovable. And sometimes people get fucked up. We talked about that last time. Is our job as storytellers is to, disrupt a pattern. And so if someone comes across your medicine and you remind them of their, this word is coming up, divinity. You remind them of their humanity, their divine humanity. It brings up poison, right? That wants to be released. All the poisons that have taught us that I don't believe in that for myself or about other people. So that's the medicine.
It's like poison ivy, right? I go to poison ivy as a teacher all the time because
Mm,
right next to poison ivy, growing around poison ivy, is jewelweed, the antidote.
mm,
They grow together actually,
yeah.
right? That's why I meant as the land as a teacher, as an elder that can
Mhm,
show us the process of community, right?
mhm.
Yeah.
And I love that there's this link too between you're saying that the medicine you're bringing forward is a belief that I am inherently lovable, and I'm saying we're inherently fundable. I'm really talking about worth. What's worth? What is funding? It's energy, it's investment, it's time, it's money, it's attention. What is worthy of my time? That is actually a podcast uh, episode that I did recently. What's worthy of my time? What's worthy of my investment? What's worthy of my energy and attention? And that's the gift that I have through this to offer my community is I'm here to remind you that every part of your process of coming back home to your humanity, which is our birthright to be in right relationship to nature, in collaboration to nature, you're worthy of that. Um, it is you're worth a village investing in you. And most of us have been indoctrinated, including me, into a belief that I'm not worthy of that. I'm not worthy of a village investing in me unless I'm doing X, Y, Z, according to capitalism, colonization, and the rest of it. So that's I want to leave it. I want to leave this classroom with that. It's the belief that you have, probably in something very personal, that then extends to your readers, your good listeners, your engagers, even your haters as your medicine. That's your gift. That's the wealth that you're offering through your story is I'm I'm giving you the gift of my medicine helps you believe that you are worthy of investment and of love. So yeah, we're gonna end this Jupiter Cazimi ceremony on that note. Any last words?
I think you've given them. I think you've given them. I say this each time and I mean it each time that I have such an abundance of gratitude for your work and for your articulation and the kindness in your offering. You know, there's something so kind and gentle
Mm,
about the way that you have um, understood your mission and are relating it to all of this paradigm in a way that people can access for free on YouTube. There's just something about that that will evolve and expand in all the ways that it evolves and expands. But I'm enjoying um, the experience of seeing this process of seeing this growth and and I'm receiving so much great teachings from it. So I am grateful and supportive, and I'm here and excited to continue to deepen and expand, create community with every single person who listens, whether it is right now or you find this video in 3 years. You
yeah.
know, um, in as we're already into the cycles of things, and it meets you when it's the right time for it to meet you. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, me too. And you know what? Completely mutual. Like I'm so happy to have you here through it was so beautiful to do this every week. I loved, yeah, just having these conversations with you and yeah, deep gratitude for everything that you bring, like all your medicine and your lived experience and your generosity, right? And being like you're so generous to me, when you respond to whatever weird shit I have to say or like good shit that I have to say. You're so generous and I really value that. And it's meant a lot to me to have a space, to have a friend to do this with, honestly. Yeah. So thank you. And you know what? This is just the beginning, right? So I want to, put it out there for people who are creators, people who are builders, people who are weavers and dreamers and any place in the village, right? That is your rightful place to express and take up and be. Continue on this journey with us. I will be officially dropping all the linky links tomorrow, which is the new moon. And so I encourage you to check out the Spider-Woman Network, encourage you to check out everything that we're offering, and encourage you to plug in and support our mission this year, which is to build our seed foundation so we can raise funds to start so many incredible projects and programming um, and serve what our community needs at this time and invite people in who really are in alignment with our vision and want to co-create with us, who need support, who want to offer amazing things in an economy that actually values the fullness of your humanity. So plug in, continue to listen and watch, and yeah, we'll end it there. I'll see you soon. Bye, everyone. Until next time.